There you have it. So, interesting, huh? As we've been talking about this and then watching this, did you look at it with some different eyes, perhaps? What, if you were to describe what this is about in one word, don't say three words, okay? One word, what is it about? Doubting? Mortality. Oh, mortality. Okay. Yeah, death. It's about death.
Life.
Is it about life?
Yes.
Yes? Does it depend on your perspective? Pardon me? Despair. I was going to ask then, what is the emotion that evokes? That was one of the questions I gave to you before. What is despair? What touched you? Yeah. What's that? Hopelessness. Why hopelessness? Yeah. Oh, but there's always light in the darkness, right? Meaning what? What do they mean? What did he mean at that point? Did he perhaps smuggle something in from Christianity? Yeah. Someone said something over here that I... Regret. Yeah. There was regret. I don't recall who the... It's been about a year since I watched this, and I don't recall who the vision of the dark-haired girl is. I don't remember. Anybody who watched it remember? I don't know if it was a love lost or whether it was, for some reason, I think it's his daughter-in-law's mother. But anyway, yeah, there's some odd things in there you catch along the way. Did that guy have a mechanical hand? Was that a robot? Yes. Yeah, that's what it's about. It's kind of different. Yeah. So, any other emotions? Sadness, yeah. Loneliness, definitely. That is a sub-theme of the despair and the sadness, that there's a loneliness there. Hopelessness, yeah. What's that? Estrangement. How? Seen how? Yeah. The father and the son, mainly. Yeah, the wife and this man, because I can't remember what had happened there, but yeah, and the son was dispassionate through the whole thing, didn't even really care that his dad died, obviously. So, broken relationships, yeah. Yeah, okay, now we're getting into stuff. Okay, no, that's good. So his idol was his work. And what was his work? The loop, whatever that was. It's hard to know what it is, and so much so that even at the end, what did Grandpa do in here? He never told me. It's top secret. You gotta have a security clearance to know that. What is the ultimate reality? If you were to, in the movie, what is the ultimate reality? What is the source of truth? What is the big thing that's out there, do you think? I'm sorry? Matter? You think it's the worldview is materialism? Yeah. Yeah. It's done artistically. You got the ecosphere there's some mystical elements to it. Obviously, it's materialism, but then you have these mystical elements where there's the ecosphere, and you can tell how long you're going to live by saying hello and that kind of thing. But at the same time, the other sphere that's in the loop, what do you think that represents? It probably represents the supreme authority or the ultimate reality, which in this case is matter. It's just it's like a representation of it.
Well, it seemed that they pinned all their hope on the science, and in the end, they all seemed to turn out hopeless.
Yeah. So they pin their hopes on science, and how do you see that in the movie? Or not the movie, the story. Where do they pin their hopes on science? How is it expressed? They say it very... Yeah, he makes the impossible possible. Does he? No. But that's the idea. And what is that? So what does this say about humanity? Born, you live, you die, that's it. Yeah. And Carol? They can't solve their own problems. So there's this reaching for the impossible, but there's at the same time an understanding of limitations, and that you can't really, there's some things you just can't do. You just have to accept it.
They're doing all those calculations on the blackboard, and then he's writing them on his notepad, and then he's just scribbling them out.
Yeah.
So science is not the answer.
Did you catch that? Oh, that was an astute observation when he was sitting at his desk and they were working in the war room next there, figuring out some kind of working out some problem on the chalkboard, and he looks up and he copies it and then he just scribbles it out like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So again, what does it say about, what else? Yeah. Yes. Right. Yeah, and that's, I think that's all, and this is somewhat subjective, but I think it's all representing the cycle of life. It starts off with the fireflies, and they die because he didn't put holes in there. He finds the dead deer, and that keeps decaying and decaying. All the while, they're growing plants and growing these beautiful, they're wonderful looking tomatoes. And so that demonstrates or represents in some way the cycle of life, and this guy is just part of it. He's just part of it. He's just gonna go away. What do you think about the conversation that the little boy had with his grandpa when they were talking about death? How did that strike you? Yeah, the little boy was hardwired to believe something beyond what they were experiencing, right? He hadn't been jaded, he hadn't been disappointed enough or let down enough by the world or bought into the worldview of materialism, and to him it was pretty obvious there must be something more. Through the eyes of a child, there's got to be something greater than what you're telling me. He said, where do you go? And what was his answer? Into an urn. But where do you go? Well, you just cease to exist. And he was pretty matter of fact about it. Saw another hand. Yeah, Carol.
I was going to say one interesting aspect, and I thought it was going to develop, but it didn't, was that when they were turning on the lights, and he said there is light in the darkness.
Yeah. The concept of the light and the darkness, they go up on the mountaintop or the hill and they turn the lights on in the forest. And, his statement was there's always light in the dark. And again, I think that's a smuggling in, a borrowing from Christianity. We're in the middle of, tomorrow Caleb is preaching and talking about the blind man whose eyes were opened. And you're in darkness and you see that Jesus is the light of the world, right? That's the real light, and there's a metaphor that in darkness there's always light. Well, what does that mean? Okay, what kind of light? What is it a metaphor for? What is the substance of what the figure of speech is telling you? What is the real light then? What is the darkness? And you just mean there are lights out in the forest? There's something more, and we're left wanting to know what that is. But there is no answer, is there? There's no answer.
So what are the fireflies at the very end doing during the day in the middle of this forest?
I don't know, other than just maybe an ABA, going back to the beginning. This is the form of literature. Anybody have any ideas of what that might mean? Yeah.
Well, just about
Yes.
He goes home and he's crying, and he walks into his house and looks at the bookshelf. And there's the books, and there's the bookend, and then there's an empty space.
Yes.
And he says something should go here. So he's hardwired to believe, or he's hardwired to know that something happens beyond death. And then we go a little bit forward in the story, and the urn is put in that place.
Yes.
And so there's a reinforcement of that idea that it's just an urn that goes in that place. But he knows there's something beyond just that urn. There's the bookend, which is like death. There's all these things that are happening in life. The bookend, but there's something that has to happen after that too.
Do you think that what Rex asked was the fireflies at the end, and I think that as you're saying that could be part of what he goes back to the ecosphere and he sees the fireflies, that maybe that's a glimmer of hope. Maybe that is the light in the darkness, but what that is, left to interpret could be anything. Yeah, but the little boy has the idea that there's something more, doesn't he? Yeah. Larry.
I think the grandfather realized there was something missing.
Whoops. Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did. I mean,
Didn't show much emotion with the grandson, or with his son, or even his wife. But yet when he walked from the car going to the house, he broke down and sobbed. He realized that I've missed a lot.
yeah. People are people, and grief is grief. And yeah, I think that's interesting. You'd appreciate this, Dave, that when they get the phone call that he died, he doesn't say that, does he? He just says he wasn't alone. I mean, that's a major faux pas when you're delivering death notifications. You have to tell people this person has died, and just, well, wait, what do you mean he wasn't alone? What happened? And so, but yeah, the despair. Other thoughts here?
I thought it was interesting that the gal who was filling the salt shakers there at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it better than my mom was buried and rather be buried.
Yeah.
It's kind of it probably turns us again to Christianity,
Yeah.
where the bodies are buried, they're not cremated.
She was saying the scene at the end where the gal in the bar is filling the salt shakers and the little boy's helping him, and she said she would rather be buried than be cremated. Might be pointing to Christianity in some way, the possibility of resurrection. I don't know. How might a person of marginal faith be affected by this story? What are the dangers of this? In other words, just first of all, a person of marginal faith, how might they be affected by this story?
Is that all there is? Yeah. Why bother?
Yeah.
Reinforces that,
But what about the faith part of it? Yeah.
reinforces that despair that they probably already have.
Reinforces despair that they may already have over things in life because their faith is marginal and they're not really really working on a relationship with God.
Well, when the grandpa told him, must have been that he was terminal,
Yeah.
and everybody asked, well, what can you do? And he said, there's nothing you can do. No.
Yeah. That message was pretty clear, wasn't it? There's nothing to be done, nothing that we can do.
If the ecosphere doesn't have an echo, then
Yeah. Ecosphere doesn't have an echo? Science, right? You got to follow the science.
I think, though, that it would make someone wonder what was the point of the existence at all. Am I just a
Yeah.
blip on the screen?
Yeah.
I mean, I am just a blip on the screen, but what's on either side of the screen?
Mm-hmm.
I think would make you wonder why do we exist at all?
Yeah. Yeah. Scott?
Well, after 9/11, people came to church.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the pandemic, they kind of shut it down. So here's some real life experiences that society's gone through, and how do people respond?
Yeah. I think that, this is well done, isn't it? There's no doubt it's well done and excellent acting, and it's a great story. I mean, when you think of, it's very intricate, and there, we could go back and unpack a lot more. And if you watched it a second time, you go, oh wow, there's more stuff there. Very well done, and that can affect people. I mean, for people that have no faith, it would be despairing, but it would still reinforce it, wouldn't it? I mean, it would still reinforce the fact that that's all there is. There's the material world, and I like the mystical part of it. Isn't that interesting, by the way? Today's Halloween, right? And how people that are so rational and materialistic, and yet they still go in for the paranormal, and the idea of perhaps there's demon possession and ancient aliens and all those things, and even though people would say rationally, I believe that the world is all there is, and yet they embrace all this mysticism. Why do you think that is? It's innate. Because people want something more, and this, I think this story demonstrates that you throw in the mystical element and goes, maybe there is something more, or we don't know what it is, and in the end, there are no answers. So one last question: how would you use our Christian worldview to answer the story in this story? The storyline. What would you say? What would you use to evaluate it and answer it? There's hope. There's light in the darkness. There's life after death. For us, yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that, because, we hear that phrase all the time. Well, death is just a part of life. Actually, they're opposites, aren't they? Christ came to defeat death. It's not part of life. They're actually opposites. It's the experience of death is part of life, but life and death are as different as light and dark, aren't they? They're opposites. And so that's an oft repeated phrase that's in here. Life is just a part of death. And then was it the daughter-in-law, whoever it was that said what you said? But it's the beginning. It's the beginning of the next existence for us. How about God, though? When someone said life after death, there's hope. What about the idea of God? We would counter this with there is a God, right? And he is much greater than that sphere underground. He's much greater than materialism, and it gives meaning and purpose to life. We don't have to regret. We don't have to despair. This man, someone mentioned how he broke down crying at that moment. That's allowable, but the message you get is that kind of grief is not the grief that we have as Christians, is it? No, we have a different grief. And yes, if you get a death sentence, that you're going to die of cancer or heart disease or something, yes, your tears are entirely appropriate, but he never recovered to the point that, it doesn't matter because I'm going to be with God, instead of it doesn't matter, period. So, all right, any other thoughts? Yes, Barb?
What was the significance of the whistle?
I don't know that much. I mean, it's hard to read everything into it. I think it was just one of those everyday things that he and his wife had. It could be anything that a couple has for 30, 40, 50 years of marriage, and in the end she whistles, and there's no, it's in whistling into thin air. It's done.
It's basically saying, I'm here.
Yeah, saying I'm here. Okay.
So we saw some ultra-modern things like all the stuff underground.
Yeah.
And all these implications. Are they on a different world? That this was an ark? There are all these things. And yet the houses were old, the cars were old. So to me the implication was this is an ageless issue.
Yes. He was mentioning, if you watch the series, and again, I don't know if I mentioned, which episode is it, Chris, we decided I watched the first 3 minutes of it and I turned it off, but there's one anyway, you'll know what it is. There's one episode you don't want to watch. The rest of them are not this despairing, by the way, but they're interesting and quirky. But yes, it seems like it's in the 1970s, but at the same time you have this advanced technology, but the advanced technology is old. It's all rusted out and looks kind of funky and odd, and so it's timeless. It's hard to really date what's going on there. Yes, Rilla.
It kind of struck me that he seemed a little superstitious when he goes to the big sphere. And it's like, well, however many times it echoes, that's like how many decades or something.
Yeah. Seems a little superstitious that he went to the ecosphere and how many times he heard the echo was like the decades that he would live, something like that. It is superstitious, but it's experiential too, because the experience was when he was there with his grandfather. When he said hello, it went 6 or 7 times, but his grandpa only went once. And his grandpa took him there for a reason, because he believed that there was some kind of mystical power there, or I don't know what was mystical, what it was, but it's all based on superstition. Yeah, that's good observation.
Another thought was, I'm sure you noticed that the son and the father had a really hard relationship. I also noticed that when the grandson asked his grandpa, he was like, what was dad like at my age? And he was like, I worked long hours then.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I was never home.
Yeah. Did you catch that? When the little boy asked the grandpa, "What was my dad like when he was that age?" He said, "I don't know. I was never home." Somebody else pointed that earlier. So yeah.
How do you think the little boy thought at the end when he went to the ecosphere and he got no echo?
I don't know what the answer to that is. Anybody have a? I don't think he said hello then, did he? Did he say hello? Oh yeah, he said hello and it went through the decades of his life. Yeah, you're right.
At the end?
Yeah. Ended with him blowing out the candles as his birthday. Okay, so yeah, interesting. But you can see how we need to think critically and biblically when we're watching, because you can sit this and watch something like this, and it's just you'd feel depressed afterwards. But it's an interesting story, and for the average person, it confirms their worldview. Yeah, really well done. Yeah, there's nothing when you die. That's all there is. And so, but that's the world that we're facing. So, okay, let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back and talk about racism.